in this case, how is it that the program knows that we're in a restaurant? It's the combination of knowing that lunch is something that restaurants serve, combined with the existence of the waitress serving it, and so on, that indicates that, to the program that we're in a restaurant.
And this is what some of the computer's accumulated knowledge looks like when displayed on the screen. It may look complicated, but it's nothing to the kind of understanding we carry around in our heads all the time. And here's another example. It doesn't say here what George does for a living, but how is the computer to work it out?
Most people make that inference at the point that they see that George is having lunch with another teacher. However, that inference alone, you can't just have a simple rule that says if you see X is with another X, then X is that thing also, because you could have, I saw Sarah with another man. Does that mean that Sarah is also a man? But if you say I saw George with another teacher, it makes sense to say that George is also a teacher. So it's very complicated. You have to look at the relationships that are going on. You can't just have a simple rule.
The end result is that we can ask the computer questions about the story and receive answers which show that the machine has in some way understood what's been fed into it. Where did George have lunch? At the restaurant. What did George do for a living? Answer: George was a teacher. How did the waitress feel at the restaurant? Answer: the waitress regretted that she spilled Coke on George. And so on. It's really quite impressive for a machine. But it is a very small world that the computer knows about.
The programs that we have are capable of understanding within limited domains. That is, if you program to talk about football, they can talk about football. If you program them to talk about movies, they can talk about movies, perhaps. But if you want them to talk about everything, if you want them to have opinions on life, if you want a full range of subjects, we're far away from that. We're far away from the philosophical computer, the all-knowing, omniscient computer.
Well, general conversation, let alone wisdom and understanding of life, is still a little beyond today's generation of computers. But if I wanted to do something less philosophical, like start this blooming car, I could use a different approach, the so-called expert system. Now, Mac, what does that mean, expert system?
Well, you can think of it almost like a book like this, which will tell you how to start your car with a set of rules, if you like, which are written by an expert. Right. Turn to a page and it might just help us. Right, look at the fuel you're getting. It doesn't even petrol in your car.
Yes, put some in just before getting here, yes.
Right, well, it says here, if it fails to start, try it again with your foot on the floor and try it and see if it starts.
Foot on the floor.
Right.
Foot on the floor. Start.
Close enough. Whoa.
Nothing.
Number 2, look for leaks. These can occur anywhere in the petrol line between the tank and the engine. Any leaks, cost me petrol. 3, check the fuel pump.
This is beginning to sound like a computer, actually. I mean, is it the sort of thing you can use on a computer?
Well, it is. Essentially, it's a set of rules, and you can go through and say if there's a spark, if there's petrol in the tank, if the engine turns, then there's a high probability it's something wrong with your carburetor.
Right.
And this is where a computer system would differ from this book, because it can deal in probabilities. That's what we mean by a computerized expert system. An expert that's put all these rules that we're talking about into a computer itself. And we've got one of these programs here. And there are 3 things that could have gone wrong with your car. There's something wrong with the electrics, there's something wrong with the spark, and there's something wrong with your fuel line. Now,
Well, we know it wasn't the electrics because the starter was turning the engine over quite well. So it's a choice between the ignition and the fuel. And let's opt for the fuel.
Let's see now. That should be possibly working. Let me flip some things off here, and let's go ahead and stop this thing. You can't see it, but hopefully you can hear me now. Hopefully things are coming through okay. This is DGSE 395 Applied Digital Studies. I am your professor for today and for the whole class, Zach Whalen. And as you can see from the slides next to me, I'm going to be talking about artificial intelligence today. Did I point the right direction? I did, actually. I can never remember if I'm reversed or not. So there we go. that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I say we because I obviously am going to do most of the talking. That's how these things are set up, but I hope to get some input from you as well. We'll see how that goes. So let's see. First things first, if you are watching the stream, you are in the right place. Classes have resumed face-to-face, but not this one, at least for today. Some of you will be joining me in person on Wednesday, and some others of you will be joining me in person on Friday. But there is no face-to-face. I'm getting to that too. There is no face-to-face interaction for this class on Mondays ever, regardless of what we do. So that's the first big thing to make sure of. I had just an email from somebody just now saying, "Where are you?" I'm here. This is where I'm meant to be for now, and for Mondays. So that is the first big thing to get out of the way. The second big thing to get out of the way is good news, bad news, or I guess it's news, and you can decide if it's good or not. Which is that I have not completed Node 2. So it is nowhere. So, I mean, it is in places, but it's not anywhere you have access to. In fact, I wanted to ask you all about that, and I did already ask Section 1 about this, and so I will pose the same question to you all, and feel free to answer in the live stream chat channel or other ways if you need to. But especially given the complexity of the different modalities of this class, one of the things I really got bogged down in trying to build the Collab notebook is giving you essentially three different kinds of things there. There's content like ideas and links to things and explanations. There's logistics like who needs to be where and when. And then there's programming. And Collab notebooks, doing all three of those things at once is very difficult just visually. Like getting all that, even if I kind of understand what I want to do mentally, conveying that visually, I'm sure is challenging for you to understand if you look through it, even if I use a bunch of emoji like I did before. So I am gradually realizing that Collab notebooks, maybe it's too much. Maybe I'm asking too much of that platform. And so what I'm proposing, and I ran this by Section 1, Section 2 now, I'm interested in your thoughts. So Canvas has this thing called modules, and you might be using it in other classes. You might have seen people using it. I did find them useful over the summer when I was teaching asynchronous online classes. So I am considering putting the content parts of these nodes in Canvas modules and then linking to the Collab notebooks for the programming part of it. And then the structural, logistical, who needs to be where part of it, I'm not sure where that is, how I'm not sure the best way to do that. I don't know if the module will work for that, if I need to sort of do branching paths within the module, if I even can. Maybe I can. I don't know. I don't want to get too crazy, but basically, like, how do you feel about Canvas modules as a way of delivering content, right? So I can embed video, I could write things, I could do all the things that I was kind of struggling to do a little bit in Collab notebooks, but it would be in Canvas. What do you think? I don't see anyone typing, but I got a lot of pretty enthusiastic endorsements of that idea from Section 1. So it's almost at this point, it's like, is there a good reason for me not to do that? So like that's kind of what I would like to hear if you have any good reasons not to use Canvas. I think Canvas is, it's the juggernaut in the industry. Like it's what it needs, but it gets things done. And I like going my own way, but I also don't want to add extra work for you all, for me. So, okay. Yeah, so I do like having it all there too, Jesse Bear, but let's try the modules at least. And then if it turns out to be more, worse, then we can always go back or find some other method. I do wonder, and I have not looked into this at all, but we have this Microsoft Teams thing, which is, we have it as a campus. Like we could create a team for this class, and Microsoft has a notebook, a cloud-based notebook server thing called Azure Notebooks that you might be able to use in Teams. So I don't know. That could be another option too, but I'd really rather not go into that ecosystem, because that's a whole other ecosystem of content. So anyway, I will stick with the module idea. So this will be released in Canvas as soon as I get it done. We'll see how it goes. But the idea is artificial intelligence. And what I wanted to do today is introduce the concept and get you thinking and talking a bit about, not talking, but interacting a bit about artificial intelligence and some of the ideas that we have about it. So the first module that we talked about that I presented to you was on algorithms. And one of the things I kept trying to draw your attention to is the ways in which we rely on algorithms to do things that humans used to do, or in some cases to help us do things that we're already doing. And I like that as a starting point. Algorithms as a word is kind of a, it's kind of abstract, and I like that abstraction, because once you start trying to figure out what an algorithm is, you end up getting into the nuts and bolts of computing, and that's programming. And so I thought it was a good way to get you to the point of writing some programming, to see some code, to see what would happen, and kind of learn why you would write that kind of thing. So I still like that as an introduction. But what I think artificial intelligence does as a concept is it lets us continue thinking about some of the same ideas around ethics, especially, but we have a new layer when we call it artificial intelligence, and that layer has to do with fictionality and personification. You could almost say that artificial intelligence is an algorithm with a face, or with an implied face, I suppose. And so I wanted to start off just with some thoughts about artificial intelligence, and as I talk through this, I think you'll see some implications, but I'd be interested to hear what you think about this as well. So I'm going to try to, if I can, start this up like this, and then, go like this. And then it's kind of hard for me to preview this on OBS, so I need to make sure that OBS grabs the right window. That looks pretty good. There we go, there I am. Right, so I'm in the middle, your chat is still over there. I really wish I had more area. I'm like in this box still. I do have a pretty big, well, anyway, I'll deal with that later. So artificial intelligence, that's what we're talking. Maybe if I sit back, I can move my arms more. Yeah, it's like, oh, look how big they get. Okay, so this is artificial intelligence is the concept today. And I wanted to talk about this because this is first and foremost a word, like a linguistic concept. This is, it has two parts to it, artificial and intelligence, and each of these adds extra baggage to this thing. And artificial intelligence is one of these things that we often say or hear, and we think we know what it means, or we assume that someone saying it knows what they mean by it. But it is also a word that can mean so many different things that it often gets used as what's called a weasel word, in the sense that people just sort of go along with it when they hear it, and they don't really interrogate what someone actually means by it. In other words, there is a tendency sometimes to overstate claims about computing and what it can do and what it should do by calling it artificial intelligence, or to over-rely on something because it's artificially intelligent. And I think this is a tendency people have, not maliciously sometimes, I mean, probably sometimes maliciously, but it is just kind of a figure of speech almost at this point to call something artificial intelligence when you're solving a problem with a computer. And that may not be the best term. It also can be a misleading term. So I want us to think a bit about this term and what it might be if we think of artificial intelligence as algorithms but with different dimensions. So for example, is artificial intelligence really an algorithm with subjectivity? So what do we mean by subjectivity? Subjectivity just means having a point of view. So can we think of artificial intelligence as having a point of view, looking at a particular problem from a point of view that is not a human's point of view or not my point of view? In some cases, artificial intelligence is literally like visual processing. So is that a point of view? Does that have subjectivity? What does it mean to be a person, basically? These are the things that are raised whenever we start thinking about subjectivity. Personhood, right? So what are the things that let us recognize that each other are people? We have names, we have lives, we have bodies, we have gender, we have all these, we have race, we have all these things that we think of as being ourselves. Can computers have those things too? In many cases, those are cultural constructs, those things that we associate with ourselves, and we can construct those things for computers just as well as we can for people. So I don't know, does that let computers have personhood? Probably not, but it's still something that lets us start thinking about them that way. And in fact, I think you probably, if you have an AI in your life, like an Alexa or a Siri, you probably think of it as a him or her or it. I mean, you probably address it as you would address a person if it were doing those things. I got very frustrated with Alexa last night, for example, because I don't know if it's this particular Echo or if it's the app, or whatever they call it, skills in Alexa. But my daughter likes to listen to audiobooks when she's falling asleep. Okay, it's no problem. My youngest daughter, she's listening to Prince Caspian from the Narnia series. Okay, right, no problem. But we're using the Hoopla app, and the Hoopla app lets you borrow books from the library. It's actually great on like Android. Like I use the Android app all the time. But on the Alexa, it has problems, and I think that was a problem. But last night, she had fallen asleep. I was going, to check on her, but Alexa was still playing. So I said, Alexa, pause, or Alexa, stop. And Alexa's like spins, like she's thinking, and then she keeps playing. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And then she didn't. And then I said, Alexa, pause, and she said, "Sorry, I can't do that." Or no, she said, "Sorry, I don't understand that," or something like. She gave a response that didn't make any sense. I said pause, and she gave a response that didn't make any sense. So I got pretty frustrated. I ended up unplugging her because I couldn't figure out anything else to do. When this happened a few weeks ago, I said, like, if this were my computer or my phone, I would restart it if it was having this problem. So I didn't know. I said, Alexa, restart yourself, and she said, okay, starting the book over again, and she just rewound to the beginning of the book and started over again. And then when my daughter woke up and started to play the book again, it was back at the beginning, and she was very upset. So it was a whole frustrating thing around this frustrating, and it's software, right? But I'm frustrated with it like it's a person. And I think the idea that you get frustrated with it like it's a person is something that could be true of a lot of different software situations. Yeah, definitely Alexa can get an attitude sometimes, or it seems like it does. Like, because you think, why aren't you giving me the answer? Like, why aren't you just doing what I said? So let's see. So again, thinking about AI, is AI an algorithm with a body? So as we think about different things that may have AI or may be AI, pay attention to how and when something has a body. And specifically, I mean a humanoid body. You could say that Alexa has like a cylindrical body, but that's not true really. But when we think about especially fictional ideas of artificial intelligence, very often they have bodies, very often they don't. I think it makes a difference whether they do or not. It makes a difference to the actor, obviously, but also it makes a difference in terms of what we think about that AI and what it can do in that world. But when we think about different things that exist in the real world right now that people are referring to as AI, some of those have bodies, some of them don't. Why is the body important? Why is it important to have a body? For example, there's Sophia. I don't have her up on a slide here, but Sophia is a robot AI that can talk to people. You can have conversations with her. And, as I said, and she has citizenship in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for some reason. So, there are ways in which that I think is easier to imagine because she has a body. I think Sophia is not super interesting, like software-wise, but I mean she is, but she's not true AI in the C-3PO sense. Like she's not like a general-purpose AI. She's good at having semi-believable conversations with people, but that's not what we think of as intelligence in humans. It's one aspect of things. So anyway, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but what you'll find over and over again is that things called AI are really narrow AI, meaning that they are artificial intelligence, and that's a reasonable term to use to describe something, but it's designed to solve a very specific problem, and it does an okay job of solving that problem or answering that question or figuring something out. That's pretty much it. But the idea of general artificial intelligence does not exist and may never exist. I'm not at all worried about that. Like some people think of it as an existential threat to humanity, maybe, but it's so far off. I'm not that worried about it. Like it's just we're nowhere near it basically. So it's it's important to have a realistic perspective whenever we talk about AI, especially when we're worried about it. I guess is what I'm talking about. Okay, so yeah, and actually this is a good one. Culpability. In other words, if an AI makes a decision that causes harm, whose fault is it? A classic illustration of this question is the thought problem, the trolley problem, the philosophical thought problem. I blanked on the name of it. I almost said the taxi problem, but that's something else. The trolley problem. This is a classic scenario where train's coming down the tracks and it's going to hit 3 people, but you can flip a switch and it'll hit 1 person instead. So do you flip the switch? Right? I mean, we could all think of different answers to that. We would probably all answer it the same way, but if we didn't, we'd have a good reason, right? It's the kind of thing that you can use to argue about moral intuition among people, and you can disagree about it, and your different points of view may reflect different values. Also, people might, you can change the scenario, so if it hits the 1 person, that person it hits is someone you know. That changes the calculation for most people. And you play out a lot of different scenarios, right? But culpability here means blame, right? So if a self-driving car is forced to make a decision like that, like run over 1 person or 3 people, and it makes a choice that outside observers just think is wrong, how do we blame it? Like, whose fault is it? Is it the car's fault, or is it the person driving, or is it the designer of the software? Like, it's very hard to say these things, but these are still questions that we should ask, because when we think about decisions and life and interaction and personhood, people have morality. That's one of the things that make us people, and also that lets us live in a society. So if we are thinking about artificial participants in that society, they also should have morality, or we should also be able to ask them to behave morally. And I don't know. It's hard to say how we do that. These little things here that I'm adding here, these are not in any particular order, by the way. But gender becomes really interesting. We kind of riffed on that a little bit last week, thinking about, does AI have gender, or when does AI perform gender, and when it does, which gender does it perform? And I think what you may find is that, and this is a very generic observation, but it does seem that when an AI or a robot, let's say, is meant to help people, like in a servant kind of role, it is more likely to be feminine, versus whenever it's a enemy of humanity, like Ultron or something, it's more likely to be masculine. So that's a very broad generalization, but I think you'll find lots of examples of it. And in either case, you could look at examples of gendered labor, stereotypes about gendered labor playing into assumptions people make when they assign a gender to a robot when they're designing one, a robot or a AI. Okay, so in thinking about all this, let me switch my thing over here. I've made a diagram, and I am a little hesitant about diagrams. I don't know how clear this is. It makes sense to me, and I think doesn't necessarily mean it will make sense to you, but we will find out. I am very interested in AI in fiction, and ways in which ideas about what we expect of AI in the real world are influenced by what we see AI doing in fiction. And the we there, I mean, is just the generic public, whatever. So in this scenario, excuse me, oh, catching my throat. In this scenario, when I talk about fiction, I mean any kind of media, so video games, film, comics, right? So any kind of thing that can imagine something. And that's when we think of fiction doing, it imagines something. Of course, fiction doesn't just make things up. It's using words that already exist, it's using ideas that already exist, and it's creating things that people will respond to. So you could look at it 2 ways. The authors are drawing their ideas from the real world and trying to create something that people will respond to. Also, the things that we respond to and that we know about are those things that connected. The things that didn't connect, we don't see them because they didn't connect. So we don't know what else might be out there. If an author is too imaginative, we might never see their work. But if they kind of connect to an idea that people are interested in or are nervous about, then they can have a good chance of some kind of success. So this is where AI fits into this diagram. AI is one of several things that an author of fiction could imagine. And when authors imagine AI, it often has different various properties, right? Very often it's going to be portrayed by a human actor if it's a visual medium of some sort. But it has different jobs, different roles, and so on. And the idea, if we looked back in history, I actually started out making this lecture as like a history of AI and fiction, but I just didn't have time. It was just too much. We could go back pretty far. The most common entry point people look at is a play called Rossum's Universal Robots from the 1930s, where artificial humans are called robots, and that's where we get the word robot. And so that's an important text in that. But we could look even earlier and find examples of artificially created minds that interact with people, going back into the 19th century at least. So there's other ways we could find a different lineage for that. But the point is that we're used to seeing AI in fiction, and that's something that I hope you agree with me is a pretty common thing you can see. Okay, so obviously people in the real world experience that and learn about that and want to do that. And then so whenever people make AI and they make something now and they call it AI, I think there's a different kind of fictionalizing going on. And so I put the AI here. Am I pointing the right direction? I don't know. The AI in quote marks, wherever that is, to put scare quotes around this. And I know that's kind of a lazy rhetorical move, but what I'm saying here is that this is very often when people call something AI, they make something, they call it AI, they want people who hear that to think a little bit at least about fictional ideas of AI. So in other words, there's a bit of storytelling. Whenever someone says, I have this new thing and it is AI, that is also a kind of fiction writing in a way. Because most of the time they don't mean what we think of as fiction, but they kind of want us to think that. And so the theme that you hopefully notice that as I'm talking about this is that we need to be critical, or we need to at least be, I don't want to say cynical, but we need to be aware of when people use the term AI or when things are presented as AI, to make sure that it's not being overstated, or at least to understand when it is and why it might be. So of course these ideas, real world AI influence fictional representations of AI. And this is the part I'm most interested in, it is possible to use AI to create fiction. And like I said, narrow AI can be used to accomplish specific tasks. And one of the specific tasks that certain AI has turned out to be surprisingly okay at is creating fiction. Now there's a lot to say about that. It creates a very specific kind of fiction, and it's not necessarily good as fiction, but it's interesting and pretty impressive that AI can do it. So it's more of a tech demo than a literary innovation, but it is pretty exciting, I guess. And that's something I know I've been researching a lot about that, and I plan to incorporate that into this module, or node, whatever we're calling it now. I'll stick with node, but that's the idea. Okay, so here are some examples of AI. These are several that I thought of off the top of my head, and you probably can think of others, but hold on to your thought about another. I will explain who each of these are, but think about some artificial intelligence being that you're familiar with from fiction, as I explain who these are. And there's a link right there. That's just so later if I send you these slides, you can click on it there, but I will also share this in Discord. So these are some examples that, again, just off the top of my head. So there is that way. I can't really stick my hand out that far, but top left, that's Gort from The Day the Earth Stood Still. He's I guess this is a spoiler from a movie that's 60 years old, but he is a robot. And he is, as the movie progresses, Gort is implied, it seems to be like the sidekick of Klaatu, who is there to deliver a message, a warning to Earth, but it turns out that actually Gort is the one in charge, and Klaatu is there just to kind of beg with humans to listen to Gort, or else Gort is going to destroy the Earth. So Gort is a robot, an artificial intelligence, but he's like super powerful. And he's basically an intergalactic police bot, and he has detected that Earth is about to develop nuclear weapons and is there to stop it. So that's his whole deal. The remake is not good, even though it has Keanu Reeves in it, but it's not good. But it's a similar issue there where Gort is the real problem. Klaatu is not. Then there's HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey. There's the android who becomes Maria from the 1920s film Metropolis, 1930s, or is it 30? I always forget the years, but I think it's 1930s. Silent film Metropolis. Cortana from the Halo series. There's Master Control Program from Tron. There's an Amazon Echo. There is, I forgot her name, from Blade Runner, but she's a replicant. I guess that's a spoiler. And then there's a computer from Star Trek. That's Spock's hand. I don't know which episode this is or which computer this is. On the original series, the computer was never very much of a character. There is one episode I have, like I was looking at the description of it, and it doesn't sound. I mean, it sounds familiar. I know because I documented it. I have seen every episode of every Star Trek series, except for Discovery. I'm still working on season 2. But this is an original series episode called The Ultimate Computer, and I believe the Enterprise is at least partly controlled by a computer for part of the episode. So I kind of would like to go back and see that again. I don't have a clear memory of that episode, but that might be it right there. I don't know. But that's an example. It's interesting. A lot of these go back to the 1960s. Like the 1960s seems like late 1960s, early 70s was a moment where people were really concerned about computers taking over, and there's lots of evidence of that. And that episode is one of them, I think. Okay, so let's see. This form here is my way of soliciting some more ideas from you. So examples of AI from fiction. So you can think of, or even the real world, like as you can see with Amazon Alexa. Although Alexa is kind of fictionalized, right? I mean, she is, we say she, and that when we call her a she, we are performing a kind of narrative work on her to kind of put her into a personhood. But you can think of this in a lot of different ways. But I have a little form here, and I will send that to you in here. So, okay, so here's the form. Actually, before I show you that, before I send the link, let me show you what the form looks like, and then I'll say when you're ready to go. So this is the right window, I hope. It's so frustrating having so many windows. Okay, so, and there it is. Okay, so the form is going to look like this, and I hope it's pretty straightforward. I'm not trying to be sneaky here. It's not very long either. But think of an AI, get it in your head before you do the form. Just think of one. Try to think of one that's a little more obscure, something that other people might not think of. Write the name here, what works they appear in. Do they have a body? Yes or no, or sort of. Do they have a gender? I've got masculine, feminine, neutral, or other. If you can't think of, I guess, I don't know if there's a way to add an option that doesn't, I guess not, okay. So I guess to say other if it's not any of those options. I wish, I'm using Airtable, by the way. Airtable is more flexible than Google Forms, but sometimes you find like you wish it could do something, but it can't. Okay, so yes, so this is, do they have an audible voice? So can you hear them? And then just, are they good or evil? And this could be good, evil, or complicated. You might not know which it is, or you might have a more nuanced way of answering that, but just pick whichever is closest. If you have a picture, that's great, but you don't have to. And then finally, what's your Discord name? I'm not creating this or recording it beyond this form. I just want to kind of make sure to see who says what in case I have any follow-up questions. So my screen is still on the slideshow. Oh, why? Oh, that there. Okay, thanks. It's before it actually just locked. Like I'm in the same. There it goes. Yeah, it just OBS source got frozen, so now it's on the form. I mean, there's nothing fancy about what I was saying. It was just the form here, but hopefully you can see it now. J Probst and Waffle King. Yeah, it looks like I can see it now on the preview. So anyway, I'm going to send you the link anyway, so you can see it yourself. And click on it, and it's in Discord, so click on that, and yeah, open it and fill it out with your ideas, and I will pull up the table with your responses as they come in. The first section already did this. I'm kind of curious to see if you all think of some of the same ones that the first section did, or if not, if you come with totally different ones. This whole exercise, by the way, is the kind of thing that would be, if we were face-to-face, this is the kind of thing where I might invite you all to add things to the whiteboard, and we can look at notes and then do like a cloud, thought cloud kind of things to connect ideas among them. But I think this should be pretty good too, because really the whole point is to generate some content, like generate some more examples, basically. And so I'm curious to see what you come up with. So I'll leave that off the screen until you all start adding things. And by the way, if you're not sure about which group you're in or whether you should show up on Wednesday, feel free to ask. Always feel free to check with me about when you should be where if you have any questions. Okay, so let's see, are you all adding things yet? Okay, nothing new yet, so I hope you're still working on it. And if you're watching this later, you can still do this. I mean, I'd still be interested to see what people come up with, so feel free to add to this even if you're watching this after the fact, which may be a few of you doing that today. That's fine. But I know at least a few of you are watching live because you were chatting, so yeah, make sure I would definitely like to see what you add to the form. Oh, okay, great, good, excellent. Let's see, which picture did you, oh good, okay, yes. I'm excited because Portal, I mean, Gladys is a really interesting one. So thanks Hum for adding that. And Jesse Bear, the Thunderhead, I don't know this one. So this is where, if I, okay. The Thunderhead seems as a work by Neil Schusterman. Yeah, so I don't know this one. So I would love to hear more about it if it's possible for you to, I mean, you can share it in the Discord chat if you'd like, or tell me later, I guess. So we've got Autopilot, yeah, from WALL-E. Yeah, it's interesting that, I mean, the movie WALL-E has lots of different AI characters or robot characters, so that's interesting. But I was really interested to see Gladys show up, and I'm glad because that you have an image. So I mean, it's kind of a spoiler. I do think everyone should play Portal. I think it's a significant work of art that people should be familiar with. But this image of Gladys reveals something that many players, at least I, missed the first time I played it, which is Gladys has a body and a feminine body. So as you play the game, you play as a character named Chell, and you hear like a voiceover of Gladys who is speaking to you and increasingly antagonistic with you, and ultimately you have to destroy her. I mean, that's kind of a spoiler, but this is who you destroy at the end of the game. And if you look and you sort of imagine those different pieces there unfolding, she does have a feminine body, and it's bound, like it's tied up in a submissive posture. And I think that's what's really interesting about her, because when we talk about good versus evil, like bots being either, when AI is malevolent, it tends to, like as I said earlier, AI can be tends to be masculine when it's malevolent. On the one hand, Gladys seems to be an exception to that, and maybe she is, but I think she's complicated. I think that's ultimately where I would put her. Because yes, she is evil, but by the end of Portal 2, you kind of get it. Like you kind of understand her point of view by the end of Portal 2. And I think that's, I think she's a sympathetic character ultimately. I think she's interesting anyway in Portal 1, but she ultimately becomes sympathetic by the end of Portal 2, which is kind of a spoiler, but absolutely a brilliant game. Should be played by everyone. But yeah, and I agree. So she actually does have race as well. Again, kind of a spoiler with Portal 2, but she does have a actual ethnic identity because she has a sort of a biography, if you will. And who is that? Oh, that's she's from, yeah, the Good Place one. Yeah. Great. Oh yeah, someone mentioned Coach from Hang the DJ, which is great. That's another, obviously we watched that, and that's a good example. A feminine AI. Whether or not it's good or evil is sort of, moot, but still pretty interesting. Jexy, the movie, what is this? I'm just kind of exploring this form here. So I don't know Jexy. And Sponge, who is this? Karen? Oh, right, the computer, Plankton's computer, right? Karen. Yes. Anita from, I don't know this show. Okay, I don't know this show. There's so many shows I don't know of that seem like I should really like them, but Guardian Robots, yeah. I mean, basically, if nothing else, I've got, and I will share this form with you all, a lot of pretty good fiction recommendations, I guess. I mean, if these weren't at least interesting, you wouldn't have thought of them when I said think of an AI, probably. So what is Jexy? Jexy the movie. I'm not at all familiar with this. That doesn't sound familiar to me at all. Jexy. All right, so it's that guy from Workaholics, right? Is he a robot? Okay. Okay, so it looks like Jexy is the virtual assistant, kind of is this like a funny version of her, like a romantic comedy version of her, maybe? Okay, interesting. I guess that guy's pretty funny, I guess. So the Thunderhead is a cloud-like AI that knows everything there is to know in the science book series, and the humans of that world can all call on it and ask it a question, kind of like Janet, except it just talks in their head rather than having physical appearance. It does adhere to the rules of the world, but I wouldn't say it's good or evil. Okay, good, yeah. It sounds like a helpful one. And also kind of like, it sounds like it performs a role similar to Alexa in the real world. If you don't know something, sometimes if you phrase the question the right way and it's something that Alexa knows, you can just ask Alexa, what's the longest river in Africa? And she can usually answer geography questions like that. So I don't know if that's what Thunderhead is like, but it sounds kind of similar. Also, Thunderhead is a type of cloud, so to call it a cloud-like AI seems like that was probably done on purpose by the author of that work. So that makes sense. Let's see if there's any more that come in. Becca, what is Becca? Again, I haven't seen the 100, so I don't know the 100. Becca. All right, great. So let's see. She looks kind of intimidating in that picture. So you're saying she must be evil? Yeah. I mean, you can tell from the lighting, right? Like that she's meant to be evil because she looks like cold and distant and intimidating. Yeah. So interesting how many of these there are, especially when you start thinking about it. And like I was saying, there's an interesting moment, I feel like, in the 60s where people are particularly interested in these ideas. And I found this one. I haven't seen this movie in many, many years, but The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. It's an old Disney movie back when Kurt Russell was in literally every Disney movie for a while. This was before he was the 80s action star, obviously. But in the 1960s, he was this teenager. And I don't remember how he got sort of mind melded with a computer, but I do remember him like passing a test really well or something. But the point is that he's a human, but he has the mind of a computer, which gives him all kinds of advantages and problems, as you can probably imagine. But pretty early in terms of this sort of timeline we're looking at. Also, the same would have come out the same year as that Star Trek episode. Also about the same year as Colossus, the Forbin Project, which is one I always like to reference, where a computer takes over the national defenses for the United States. And spoiler alert, it doesn't go well. And Smart House, that's another one. That came up in section 1 too. I don't remember, I never watched it, but that does seem like people have a fond memory of the Smart House. So I guess that's another example of AI. And I imagine things, don't go well, or they do. I don't know. Well, so I am interested in all of these, and so I will share this Airtable. I think I can share this with you all, or make it public somehow. If not, I'll just copy it into a spreadsheet and make it a Google spreadsheet and make it public that way, in case you're curious. The follow-up activity, and I ran out of time in section 1, so I assumed I would run out of time for you all as well, and I pretty much have, was follow-up activity was to take one or more of these ideas and then make a Twitter bot of it. So make a fake Twitter account and impersonate one of these characters that you've listed here. You actually will probably find some Twitter bots for many of these already. But I thought I could at least go through the process of creating a fake Twitter account, and you can try it on your own if you'd like to. I plan to incorporate this into the module work later on, so this is something that I will walk you through later. But if we were face to face, I would walk you through personally. But I'll do some walkthroughs through it here. Or I have older videos of me doing this. It's not actually super complicated. There's a couple of steps though, and awkwardly Twitter keeps kind of changing how they do things. So earlier, for section 1, this is an account for someone was interested in the idea of the software. Whenever you deposit a check, how it kind of has a personality, or you get frustrated with it. So this is a Twitter account for mobile check depositor. I just thought it was interesting, by the way. Like, I just signed up for this account. It's kind of disappointing to me that I've given no other information about this, because it's not a real person. So no other information about this person other than a few profile details. The top recommendation is Donald J. Trump and then Ben Shapiro. Two of the most toxic, problematic Twitter people, users of this platform, are suggested as things I should follow. So I think that's really disappointing on Twitter's part. Twitter has continued to be a disappointing platform, but the fact that, for example, Donald J. Trump has probably one of the most highest follower accounts, and also regularly abuses the terms of service on Twitter, violates their policies, and only has started recently getting checked for that, I think is really disappointing on Twitter's part. Letting him continue to have an account, fine, but they promote his account. They say, here's someone you should follow. But I disagree. I should not follow him. So anyway, and I don't know who this person is. Bill Pulte? Philanthropist? Okay. Great. So let me sign out of this account, and I will show you how to make another fake account. Make a fake account. If it will let me. Yeah, it should probably let me. So we'll see. Sometimes it'll lock you out. And that's why I think it's useful for me to go through the process, because sometimes you hit little hiccups, and if I hit them, I can show you how to work around them. And there's a couple of steps that they're kind of sneaky about. So I want to kind of show you how to avoid that if I can. Okay, so again, this is something you do not have to do right now, but you are welcome to. And if you don't do it now, you can maybe do it later if you want. So I'm going to sign up for an account. I guess I should pick an identity. Who am I going to make an account for? Maybe since you all are enjoying Smart House, I will make an account for Smart House, for the Smart House. All right, so my name is Smart House. Okay, so you can sign up with a phone number. If you don't have to, then don't. Sometimes though, it'll force you to. It'll force you to not, it'll say you're not allowed to use the email. But so far it seems to be letting me use the email. You might recall I showed you all the infinite Gmail trick the other day, I believe. If not, I forget whoever I showed that to, but it's a good trick to have. It works for Twitter, and I'll show you why that's important. Okay, so this is important, actually. Picking a birthday. So you should pick just a date. The month of the day doesn't matter, but the year matters a lot, because if you pick a year that is too recent, then Twitter will be like, oh, you're too young, you can't use our platform, and they'll lock you out. They'll lock your account. Like, you won't be able to log into your account anymore and change it. So what you should do is pick a date that's far enough back. I don't know when this movie Smart House came out, but it's probably in the 90s, right? If anybody knows if it's old enough, let me know. I can just Google it real quick too. Let's see, Smart House. Oh, directed by LeVar Burton. Great. It came out in 1999, so that should be old enough for a Twitter account, right? So let's go ahead and say 1999. Okay, so uncheck this. You don't want Twitter tracking you across the web. I mean, obviously. Next, so okay, create your account. We're going to call it Smart House. That's the email. That's the phone. Okay, so let's hit the go button. And it's basically just double checking your your responses here, I guess. I don't know why it kind of takes you through this a few times. Okay, so it now has sent me an email, and I'm not going to pull up my email on the screen, but it has sent me an email. Notice what I said about earlier about the fake Gmail account. So this actually is not my real email address, but this part is the Zach.Whalen part, and that's going to lead it to go to my inbox. So let's see. 366. Okay, so now I need a password. I use the same password for all of my fake accounts, but none of my real accounts. So it's all my fake accounts are the same one, and then all my real accounts are all different ones. Okay, so we need to pick a profile picture. I'll do that later. Bio, I'll do that later. Do not upload your contacts, right? And now we can indicate our interests. So this is where you have to kind of think through the persona. In some cases, your AI that were listed there have an obvious thing that they might be interested in. Others maybe not, right? So you kind of have to guess. So let's say for sports, fantasy sports, right? Because I'm staying at home, I'm a house. So news, not really interested in news except maybe technology. Music, not really. Entertainment, arts and crafts, sure. Lifestyle, home improvement, definitely. Travel, absolutely not. Home and family, sure. Arts and culture, architecture, yeah. Fun. I'm not interested in fun. Okay, tech news, tech personalities, no. Okay, so that's a pretty good profile. Oh, cooking, baking, good point. It's too late. I'll go back. But I'm not going to follow anyone else. You can see lots of suggestions here. When I did this before, Elon Musk was also the most recommended based on my interests. So that's kind of ironic, I guess. Okay, no notifications. And now I have a brand new fake Twitter account. As you can see, once again, it's still recommending Donald Trump, Ben Shapiro, and this person. But it's actually giving me a timeline, interestingly. I actually have some things that it wants me to see, some tweets in my timeline. Even though I have not followed HGTV, it's giving me HGTV tweets anyway. And yeah, okay, so some of these are more generic, but yeah, Wendy's. All right, so pretty standard array of Twitter personalities, actually. Okay, so that's how you make a fake Twitter account. Now, what I will show you how to do, and what I am going to encourage you to do eventually, is make it so that your bot can tweet and reply to tweets by other people. And in fact, what I'd like to end up doing is letting you have your bots interact with each other. You think about these AI that you've given personality. What would these personalities think of each other, and how would they respond to each other? And we'll do a little kind of role playing with that. But we'll work with that a bit later. Yeah, so Hum, you brought another really interesting example. I just noticed there, the I am computer from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Really one of the most disturbing short stories. And I mean, it's certainly a favorite in a way, but very disturbing. So. I'm not going to give away the premise of it. I'm not going to even describe the premise of it, but there is definitely a computer that is self-aware and all-powerful, and that's a big problem for what is left of humanity at that point. So, interesting example would be interesting as a Twitter bot. Like, I'm not sure what that particular being would have to say on Twitter, but probably would not be fun for humans. Okay, so let me see. How are we doing on time? I feel like I'm getting long. Yeah, I am. So I'm gonna wrap it up here, but or pretty much here. Just a couple reminders. So obviously today was a stream. You have watched the stream now, whether live or maybe in archive form if you're watching it later. Some of you will be meeting me in class on Wednesday. Others will have instructions for what to do online. And if I get the module, like if it will either be just built into the module, or I will send it in a Canvas announcement. It'll be instructions for you to complete something, and I will just be checking that later. I won't be able to monitor that while I'm in class with the other group. So it'll be kind of an asynchronous experience, but I think it'll be all right. If you are not sure which group you're in or where you need to be, then feel free to check with me. It should be several ways you can check that. So, do that. But if you're still not sure if you want to double check, then by all means, please do. Just remember, if you are coming face to face, it's HCC 327. So you go in the front door of the HCC, go up the stairs, and then they double back and then turn right, and then just go to the end of that hallway and it's the last 2 doors on the right for HCC 327. As you arrive, there should be I think there will be some wipes, sanitizing things near the door as you arrive. So grab one of those. Don't forget your mask. Very important to have your mask on. Remember social distancing as you arrive, so give people a chance to come and go as they need to. I don't know if there's a class. Yeah, well, I guess there will be a section of this class right before you all, but with 20 minutes between sections, it shouldn't be a traffic jam or anything, so should be fine. But yeah, if you have a name tag, by the way, that might be okay, because I don't know if you've had much, if you're on campus, you probably have started seeing people. I find it really kind of hard to recognize people sometimes with face masks on, at least at first. Like, it takes me a minute. So I'm gonna probably wear a name tag, even though you know what I look like. But if you have one, that would be okay. Or I might see if I can find some of those like write-on name tags for people to put on, just so I can make sure I know who I'm talking to. Maybe I should have you all put your Discord nicknames on there, since I'm starting to get to know you all. Some of you I'm starting to get to know more as your nickname than your actual name. Okay, so thanks for these contributions. Lots of really interesting and really diverse examples of AI in fiction. So we're going to start doing some things with it and working through some ideas through the next node starting Wednesday, with some of you face-to-face and some of you in person. Some of you online. So I will wrap it up here. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you have a good afternoon, whatever you're doing, and I will see some of you on Wednesday, but all of you will see me on Wednesday. Anyway, you know how it is. All right, that's all. Bye.